I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing. Hi, and welcome back to The Gritty Nurse, an unfiltered conversation about healthcare, nursing, and the intersection of health politics and policy. My name is Amy, and I am The Gritty Nurse. This podcast examines hot topics in healthcare and discusses the changes that we need to see to have a more efficient, robust, and ethical healthcare system that is safe not only for the patients that we see, but also for those who work in the system as well. Sorry, no fluff here, just awesome, compassionate humans and a lot of grit. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any real stuff from The Gritty Nurse. So today we're talking about breaking the mold, about challenging the tired corporate image of what is considered to be professional. Nursing has long evolved and we need to evolve with it. Just because someone says that this is how a profession should look doesn't mean by any means that that's how it should actually look. Our guest today is living proof that self-expression and profound clinical dedication don't just coexist. They make for a better, more authentic advocate. Please welcome Jessie Barmby, a registered nurse, author, and mental health champion known across social media as the Tattooed Nurse. Jessie isn't just known for his visible, compelling art. He's known for the honest conversation he spearheads about the toughest parts of the job, the burnout, the struggle for resilience, and the crucial work of finding meaning through service. He draws on his personal journey, his experiences in RN, and even the wisdom of Buddhist philosophy to help healthcare workers and people everywhere build self-awareness, compassion, and sustainable strength. He is also the author of the book, Buddhist Path, to overcome depression and achieve supreme happiness. Today, Jessie is here to talk about how to show up as your true authentic self and the grit that it takes to stand out in this traditional field and to truly show what professionalism looks like. Let's welcome Jessie to the show. Welcome, Jessie, to the show. Would you mind starting with telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you ended up in nursing?
Yeah, my name is Jesse. I've been working as a registered nurse in Calgary for about 15 years now. I'm heavily tattooed, including my hands and my throat, and it's given me a lot of opportunities to kind of connect with people in ways that I feel others might not have had the same opportunities. I'm also the author of a book called Buddhist Path, How to Overcome Depression and Achieve Supreme Happiness. And I bring a lot of the principles that Buddhism has taught me into my nursing practice to help my patients and the students that I may teach, and also to help myself.
Yeah, so what area of nursing are you specifically in?
So I work in medical nursing.
Okay.
So to people who don't work in like a medical profession, the way that I explain that is essentially not surgical nursing. So I'm mostly dealing with disease processes rather than broken bones and injuries and that kind of thing.
Okay, that's real. Well, I mean, that's, I guess, so there's the med surge, but you're just doing the medical
Just
piece.
just the
Just
med.
okay, that's cool. So how did you end up in nursing? Like, what pathway led you to nursing?
You know what? It's kind of interesting because growing up, I didn't really have any aspirations. I didn't really have any goals. I didn't really have any trajectory. And I had graduated high school and I wasn't really sure what next. My father was in the hospital at the time and he had a male nurse. And my dad was talking to him and I came in to visit my dad and he said, you know what? This young man, he's been working as a nurse. He says he's got good income. He likes his job. Why not give this a try? So I almost went into nursing almost on a whim. Like there was very little thought. Give this a try. Sure, why not? And 15 years later, I'm still here, still
I was going
learning.
to say, like 15 years later, and here you are, right? And then also
Exactly, yeah.
making waves, not just like, you're doing like really good work, and you have a book, so that's kind
Actually, I
of
certainly
amazing.
hope so. Yeah, it's something. Yeah, every day is new. I'm constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly evolving and teaching. And yeah, it's 15 years. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot.
I bet. So one of the things that you mentioned is you call yourself the tattoo nurse, and you did say so. You have tattoos pretty much all over, right up to your neck, right? And I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. But there's something that caught my eye about your social media. So you posted about how many people said that they wouldn't take care from you. Could you
Right.
expand on this?
Yeah, so I started posting on social media before the pandemic. And at the time, it was a way for me to really regain a lot of self-confidence and self-esteem. And as I grew older and had some life experiences, it became more about mental health and encouraging resilience and preventing burnout. Less about vanity and more about helping others, I guess is a good way to say it. And I noticed as it became more about nursing and mental health, people would make comments about they wouldn't trust a medical professional with tattoos, or they seem to think that it was something that would be a deal breaker for them.
Right.
And the interesting thing about that is I've been nursing for 15 years, but I've been visibly tattooed for about 10 years, and I not once have had any situation where a patient has turned down care because of my tattoos. And what I kind of take from that, it's one of those situations that where when it's hypothetical, it's really easy to say, this is something I disagree with. But when it comes down to it, when your life is on the line, basically, people's tune kind of change. And I found a lot of parallels with that in other aspects of life. People will say, I would never want this kind of life-saving intervention. I would never, if I'm ever in this situation, don't keep me on life support, et cetera, et cetera. But when
Right.
it comes down, when it's no longer a hypothetical situation, when you're in that actual facing that situation right in the eye, it's interesting how perceptions change. So yeah, it's been interesting seeing the reactions on social media and kind of being able to not exactly confront these people, but actually kind of talk to these people and understand their perspective. Why, like, at what point do our prejudice kind of disappear, and we're willing to accept things that we thought we weren't willing to accept.
You're 100% right. And I think actually you're doing like an amazing job because, again, when people are on social media, I think they're completely different people versus them being in front and like standing in front of you, right? So it's just it's that
Absolutely.
social media effect where it's just, I can say this awful kind of shit to you on social
Yeah.
media, but like when we're hitting the ground running and they're standing in front of you, no one would ever probably say that. And I think I saw something to the tune of like over 1 million comments, and then like you said, nobody has ever refused your care. And I think
Yeah,
that again
exactly.
just speaks to the character of the work that you do, because at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter what you look like. It's about what you're doing and the care that you're providing to your patients, and I'm sure that it's amazing. I saw one comment, and maybe this is just it was a little gripe for me. I saw someone say that as long as it is not demonic Democrat, like what the hell? Like, again, just
Yeah,
pulling in politics when really we shouldn't be pulling in politics.
I wouldn't say I was exactly surprised by that comment
Mm,
because, like you said, it seems people will pull politics into just about anything these days.
right.
Uh, it's interesting because again, you can use that kind of same comparison. Politics don't impact the care that I provide at all.
Right.
I would never bring my own political opinions or my own biases to the workplace like that. The same kind of situation. If someone were, on their, I don't want to be so dramatic to say on their deathbed, although that could be the situation. But if someone is requiring medical care and they say, "Oh, who did you vote for?"
Right.
It's I don't truly believe that would actually happen. You know what I
I
mean?
agree.
So yeah, it's kind of funny. It's one of those situations where when everything's going well for you, when everything's a hypothetical situation, it's so easy to be kind of critical of things that really don't matter. I wish I could remember who came up with this concept, but the hierarchy of needs, right? So we have our very basic needs: food, shelter.
Maslow. Yes.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
take your word
Maslow.
for it. Okay, and it's kind of like one of those situations. So when you're at home, when you're healthy, when you're not requiring medical attention, it's easy to kind of nitpick about those really silly things. For example, a political affiliation or physical appearance, or there's a thousand different variables, right? But when your needs are something like I need antibiotics to survive, I need medical attention to survive, people realize what's really important when everything's put into perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I remember even seeing like during the pandemic how people would be like, "Oh, I'm not going to take blood from a Democrat or I won't take this from a Republican." It's like, absolutely you would. Like when the
Yeah.
rubber meets the road, it doesn't matter and it shouldn't matter. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, like, how would they even know? You know what I mean? And I guess that's really the point that we're trying to make here is that there's really no distinction there. Yeah, it's yeah,
Well, it's kind of like we all bleed the same color. So,
precisely. That's about right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And the other piece to this is just like at the end of the day, we're going to care for people however they look. And I think that should be kind of, the reverse. However we look, we're still going to take care of people. So I don't think anyone should have any of these kind of preconceived notions, but they do. So just kind of
yeah.
circling back to this whole idea about you being the tattooed nurse and the whole idea of professionalism. So I scoff because if it wasn't nursing, let's say you were a firefighter, would they be as up in arms about your tattoos? Probably not. Or if you were a
Probably
police
not.
officer, probably not. But why in healthcare is it a problem? Why would healthcare say that that's less professional? I just think I think it's nonsense. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. Yeah, it is nonsense. It has no impact on my ability to provide care, and it's kind of interesting. Like every once in a while, I'll be working at the bedside, and people don't. Maybe they won't notice right away. For example, like maybe I'll be wearing like my if someone's on isolation, I'll be wearing the gown and the mask, and they might
Right,
not
right.
notice right away, and then. Later, they say, "Oh my goodness, you got a lot of tattoos." So it's kind of interesting that, it's not something that it's not the first thing that people will
Notice it.
perceive in healthcare, right? So, and again, that you could use that as an analogy for so many of these other variables about, political affiliation, sexual identity, religion, skin color. There's a thousand different things. And yeah, it's also, I think there's a little bit of you're mentioning it might not be as big of a deal for like a firefighter or some other profession. As you're personally aware, there's a sort of image of nurses. They're also often referred to as angels or heroes, that kind of thing. So I think there's a certain perception of what we would view. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but some people might use the words again, savior, angel, or whatever to refer
Right.
to the nursing profession. In general, some people might view, picture an angelic person. They're not going to have this image of tattoos on them.
But I think it's again, this is where I think the image of nursing and the idea behind the image of nursing needs to change. And I would put forth an argument as, there's these images where they say that we're angelic, but then they can juxtapose those with, Halloween costumes and be like, well, there's also the sexy nurse. So of course people's
Yes,
minds can
that's
can change, right? So it's just
yeah,
like,
absolutely
how do we rewrite the narrative to be like, there is no one specific image of how nursing should be. It's more of a
right.
collective of what we do versus how we look. And yes, that is going to take some time, I believe. What does professionalism mean to you?
To me, professionalism means doing the best to your ability in that situation. So that may mean if there's a task that I don't feel that I'm able to perform to the best of my ability, that I would do some more research. I would enlist the help of other nurses, etc. Review the policies, procedures, and kind of just having the best intention and trying to do the very best job that you can do. That's my idea of professionalism. And I was mentioning that I come from like a background of Buddhism, and that's kind of my influence, not only career wise, but just it's my philosophy in life, really. And a lot of the Buddhist principles, they align so closely with the principles of good healthcare, for example, accountability, safety, responsibility. So it's not really that surprising that they're so closely correlated. To be in Buddhism, we try to be moral and ethical and try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And that could also be considered my definition of professionalism as well.
Yeah, I like that definition of professionalism. And I think people can take a page from that definition and from what you've learned from Buddhism, because at the end of the day, professionalism shouldn't really be about how one person looks, right? I know that, you've received certain comments. And again, at the end of the day, when you meet a patient, that's not even the first thing that's on their mind. I remember as a nurse, is like, you have to wear white shoes. And it's like, because that's what's professional. It's like, well, why do white shoes have to be professional? Why can't I wear these? And of course, these different concepts are continuing to evolve. But again, I'm glad that we and we all should be moving well beyond this idea of professionalism having to do with how somebody looks, how someone's hair might look. I know in the States, for Black folks, they even have something called the Crown Act because Black people would be discriminated against maybe how their hair is if they're showing their natural hair. And again, just moving away from this idea that how someone looks is deemed whether that look is professional or not. So I agree with you with your definition as well. So you talked a little bit about, burnout, resilience, and some of the work that you've already been doing. You wrote a book. We were just kind of talking about some of the principles. How did you land into learning about Buddhism?
So about 5 years ago, my mental health was at its lowest. I struggled with depression and anxiety as long as I can remember from very, very, very young age. And when the pandemic hit, like many other people, I don't want to say majority of people, but possibly a very large percentage of people at the very least, were really struggling with their mental health. And I was having a lot of passive thoughts of suicide, and it was just getting to the point where it was just constant. I could not think of anything else other than, how am I going to get through this day? So I went to a physician to get a prescription for antidepressants, and they had recommended meditation as well. And it was really quite interesting because for some reason, I've just kind of felt this draw that meditation was the way to go. And prior to this, I was not what you considered a spiritual person at all. I had no kind of religious or spiritual or any kind of beliefs like that. But for some reason, I felt really drawn to meditation. So I was kind of struggling to pick it up. It's like any other skill. It's something that you have to really practice and be diligent with to be able to really grasp.
Right.
Grasp how to do it well. And I was researching different forms of meditation, and I found this website. It said Buddhist meditation. And what I thought it was is going to be, this is the type of meditation that a Buddhist monk would practice. And it is, but it is also an introduction to Buddhism. And the very first thing it explained was Buddha's Four Noble Truths, which are his first sermon that he gave publicly. And it resonated with me so deeply. I remember actually telling my wife, I feel like this was written for me specifically, even though it was written 2,500 years ago. It resonated with me so well. And they say that's why Buddha was such an excellent teacher, is because he was really able to relate to people on such a deeply personal level. And I just kind of ran with it from there. It was almost like a switch had been turned on. I discovered Buddhism. I thought, this is it. This is for me. And I've been running with it ever since. Meditation every day, just reading Buddhist sermons almost every day. I have to admit, I've been slacking off on that a little bit lately, but it's something that has been largely transformative in my life. It's a major, major life change for me. I would equate it to the equivalent of a child being born. That's how significant it's been. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that, Jesse. And I think that, there's, for example, with myself, 6 years, I don't know if this is the time frame, I guess, somewhere between the pandemic, I was kind of in the same boat too. I just felt like I was just kind of ship rudderless. I was really burnt out. And again, that's more of an effect of the system because the system is not dealing efficiently with the changes and the decline acuity, the understaffing, under equipment, all of these different things. And I actually had a boss who was awful. And maybe this is another side where we could have this conversation where I don't know if maybe female nurses' experiences are different. I'd love to hear your perspective maybe another time, but just the bullying, I don't know, was just awful.
Right. Yeah.
And you would think that, so I had bullying kind of at the bedside, but where it really transformed for me was I had a manager, or I should say a director, who was from hell. She was a nurse as well. And she just gaslit me. It was just pretty much the most awful time. But then for me, I kind of hit my lowest, and my outlet was talking to people. For me, I found catharsis in having conversations with other nurses like I'm doing now about, mental health, about how people continue to want to be nurses in this time, in this era. And that's what for me was kind of the trigger, feeling I couldn't have been the only one, because I did struggle with anxiety and depression in nursing school as well. I don't know. I think nursing school was the trigger for me. It's I'm still doing this after all this time, but you know what? I do enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's so important. And I think it's so important hearing from men speaking about mental health, because I always say this, like I did an episode just last week about misogyny and feminism and the manosphere. And I literally said to I think my other guest was I think she was from Alberta. And we were just like, what's wrong with men right now? They're so angry and we need to like deal with them. But like, it's so refreshing to hear another man to say, I'm doing this for my own mental health and not trying to be like to deal to you. Cause again, anger is a form of an emotion that is not controlled. And it's just
Absolutely.
to say, hey,
Yeah.
there's something that I found that works for me, that maybe this can work for other people too. So I'm glad that you found something. And I hope that you continue having these conversations about mental health and other men can like get on board, because men aren't okay. Just as
Yeah,
wild out there.
that's definitely not the first time I've heard that. I get a lot of people reaching out, specifically talking about men's mental health in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because when I wrote the book, I didn't even, not even for a second, cross my mind that this is, for men or for nurses. I wrote it
Right.
for everybody, for, actually, I think there's even a paragraph in my book where I say, like, regardless of your religion, your background, again, all the variables we mentioned before, your sexual identity,
Right.
your culture. It's for everybody. It's for everybody. Buddhism and any other religion, it doesn't compete with any other religion. Some of the most well-recognized Buddhists in the world, they identify as followers of Christ's teachings as well as Buddhist teachings. You can do both, and you should do both, even some people would argue. They're complementary to each other, the teachings. And, I always kind of feel like this might be a little bit of a controversial thing to say. That being said, no one's ever pushed back on it either. But I kind of feel that most religions are more or less the same kind of thing in terms of how we speak about love and forgiveness and charity. All major religions all say, like, no one's going to say, oh, no, like, this is a bad thing. You don't want to love thy
Right.
neighbor. You don't, um,
Right.
when I kind of feel that spirituality is like can be compared to tea. This is a analogy that the Dalai Lama had used. Spirituality is the tea, and then religion is the tea leaves. So it's all pretty much the same thing. You know what I mean? There's like little subtle differences. You might have, a green tea, a black tea. I'm not a big tea drinker, but you know what I mean.
Right.
But yeah, there's 100 different varieties, but it's all the same. We're all looking for the same thing from it. We're all starting to get that warmth and that comfort from it, right? So yeah, like for me, Buddhism was the one that resonated with me most. But I think that spirituality in any form is beneficial, not just to the person that's practicing it, but to everybody that we influence as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's one of the things in nursing that we talk a lot about too, right? And
Hmm.
I think people have to understand the distinction between religiosity versus spirituality. They are different things and they can intersect, but they are still different things. And you're right. I think that it's important that everybody finds that source of whatever it might be for that individual, right? So before we go, two last questions. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to touch on today?
One thing that I found that's really profound with that my tattoos have actually benefited my career. I've heard countless times, just dozens of times, from patients, from family members, that they actually find my appearance to be more comforting.
Mm.
We were talking about how I'll get hundreds, thousands of comments on social media about how they would refuse care from someone who's visibly tattooed or so heavily visibly tattooed. And it's kind of ironic that the opposite is actually true. I've had far more, like infinitely more comments about how my appearance has been comforting to people. I've been told that I seem more relatable. For example, a lot of our patients come from a background of struggling themselves, right? Homelessness or addiction or, any kind of social issue. And they see me as somebody that might be able to be a little bit more conscious of that or be able to relate to that a bit more. But you have the image of the clean cut doctor with the white lab coat.
Right.
And it's a bit of a stereotype, but that's kind of associated with someone who's very privileged and affluent and hasn't really faced a lot of struggle in their life. I'm not saying that's necessarily true,
Right.
but that's the stereotype that some people might perceive. And I have, as I was mentioning, I've struggled with my mental health. I've been in dark places many times, many times. And I think people can kind of sense that, or at least understand that my life hasn't been all sunshine and roses and good times, right?
Right.
And I would imagine, I'm not, obviously I'm not the one to speak on this, but people from other backgrounds. I'm living in Alberta, which is a very conservative area. And it's sad to say that we do have a lot of patients that, or not just patients, there's a lot of racism in Alberta. There's a lot of intolerance in Alberta. And I know that there's other nurses that come from different backgrounds or different beliefs or identities that also face the same challenges. And I've heard similar stories where you might have, a patient who's transgendered and they're worried about, oh, I'm in Alberta,
Yeah.
I might not be accepted here. To have a healthcare worker from that can relate to that, it puts the patient at ease. So
Yeah.
that's something that I'm very consciously aware of. That my tattoos have been beneficial to my nursing practice countless times,
Yeah.
countless
No,
instances of that happening.
I believe that. And I think that's where people don't understand when we talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, that includes someone who is heavily tattooed. Like, or like
Exactly.
people think it's only about race or it's only about
Right.
ethnicity. It's like, no, it's about like
Yeah.
diversity of thought, diversity of
Yeah.
how someone might appear. It's about all of these different things. And this is what makes up that group of individuals. And we need that in nursing. I mean, that's hugely important that, a patient can look at you and say, hey, I feel connected with you because I can understand where you're coming from just by how, you might appear or these different things. Like, I think we would be remiss if we didn't have people who came from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different ways that people look, and we didn't have that in nursing. I think that would be actually doing a disservice to our community. So I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing. I'm glad that, you've had more positive experiences with being tattooed. And of course, my last question is, what's your favorite tattoo? Do you have one?
But you know what? That's a good question. I'm always getting tattoos. I get
Oh, you're
maybe like
not
one or
done.
two. No, oh yeah, I don't think I'll ever be done, to be honest with you.
Okay,
I don't think I'll ever stop.
cool.
Yeah, oh, one of my most recent tattoos, I have it on my collarbone. It's written in Sanskrit, and the translation into English is "After the fall comes the bloom." So
That's
it's kind of an
cool.
analogy for the changing of the seasons and also the changing of mental states. So it's something that's deeply personal. So I'm getting a little bit emotional here, but
Okay.
when my mental health was at its lowest, and then I discovered Buddhism, and then my mental health was at its highest. Yeah, after the fall came the bloom. So
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah, something that
beautiful.
yeah. So that's my current favorite.
Thank
If
you
you
for
ask me
sharing
again
that with
in
me,
a few
Jesse.
months, I might have a different answer.
Right, right. No, but thank you for sharing that with me, Jesse. I think it's
Thank you.
so important that we find those things and that we remember them and we mark them in a different way. So for you, it's, having that tattoo, it's like that constant reminder of even when you're in the lowest place that you will find that high place again. And I
Precisely.
applaud you for that because again, I struggle with mental health. I am on medication. I do my therapy as well. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have people who really surrounded themselves around me and continue to support me. And I sense that you have those people in your life as well. And,
Yes.
also that you're doing the work of learning to be a Buddhist as well. So I think all of those things, make a really healthy mind. So again, thank you so much, Jesse, for coming on the Gritty Nurse podcast and sharing your story and sharing your favorite tattoo that might change next month. But all the best to you in your career. I hope we stay in contact. Sometimes I'm out there in Alberta. I was actually out there, what was it, last year? I actually did a speaking engagement at the United Nurses of Alberta. I think it was their conference.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so maybe if you're ever out and I'm out there, I actually lived in Alberta too for a short stint. I lived in Cochrane, Alberta.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Cochrane's nice.
Yeah, it was challenging when I was out there. It was like the coldest winter they had in something like 136 years. It was like
My
winter straight
goodness.
until June. I was like, I need
Yeah,
to go back to Ontario. This is too hard.
yeah, yeah. That's a bit much.
Yeah, but thank you so much for coming on, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.
Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses: Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amie Archibald-Varley. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much, and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.